Ben, how are you, compadre? It's a pleasure to meet
So
you.
good, Daniel. So
Thank
good.
you. That's fantastic. Like always, smiling with this
Yes.
energy. It's amazing. Ben is a good friend of mine that we met like 3 years ago in Cincinnati with this fantastic event of EO, an international and global organization that we both belong. You wanna explain to the public what is EO, Ben?
The terrible organization. Never join. I've been a member for 13 years. I cannot recommend it. No. EO stands for the Entrepreneurs Organization, and it's about 18,000 members around the world, generally CEOs and founders of businesses with at least $1 million of annual revenue. It is a very powerful organization to build community and connectedness and a sense of you're not alone as an entrepreneur. And that's one of the things I have valued about it the most over the last 13 years, is that it helps you appreciate the fact that even though entrepreneurship is often a very lonely journey, this builds a lot of connectedness and community along that journey.
Fantastic explanation. Are you selling us a membership? Because it sounds like you're a fantastic.
Yes, I only get a 25% commission, so get them while they're hot. No,
Yeah.
I am not on the clock.
Yeah,
but I do promote it to friends of mine who have their own companies, just because it's being an entrepreneur is a very difficult thing, and there's increased levels of depression and all sorts of negative thoughts, and it's a hard thing. So I think this is kind of a good antidote for that.
Yeah, I agree with that, Ben. And I have this fantastic opportunity to meet you in this event in Cincinnati, and then since there we've been in touch, and then we crashed into the Burning Man.
Yes.
It was a fantastic and amazing experience. What do you think about this experience of Burning Man as an entrepreneur? What do you think?
There's it's like, don't get me started talking about Burning Man. You could go on for hours. But what I'll say is one of the things I appreciate the most about Burning Man is it's sort of it's a very large disconnect from the regular day-to-day of living. And I would say that as an entrepreneur, one of the reasons I found it very, I guess, lonely or isolating was I felt that everybody I came in contact with was either somebody who worked for me, who wanted to work for me, who was a customer who I was selling, or somebody who was trying to sell me. And so I kind of always felt like my guard was up and I had to be like the president, not just go along, get along, easy going. And one of the things I really liked about Burning Man is, that is a world over there back at this time in Redmond, Washington. And here at Burning Man, you could almost like just be a whole new different person for a week. And so I really liked that you could just be different, not have to worry about what your kind of identity was at home, but you could just sort of adopt a new identity. And so I really enjoyed that. And I think as an entrepreneur, it's incredibly difficult to, quote, take a vacation. And there's like, take a vacation where you go to Bermuda for a week and you stay at a nice hotel and you lay on the beach and drink pina coladas. But if 50% of the time while you're drinking pina coladas, you're thinking about payroll and cash flow, who needs to be hired and who needs to be fired, and are you going to get that big deal? You're really just working remote while your family's on vacation. It's not quite the same. So I felt that Burning Man was really like a vacation. My first time I was there for about 10 days, and it took me about 3 or 4 days to sort of close the regular Ben and open, like, I'm not thinking about work. I'm not worried about that. And that was big for me.
That is an amazing contribution, Ben, because you're right. It's a true vacation. It's a true disconnection. Ben, tell me in few words, what is it that you do
Yeah.
for living?
So I've got a two-step answer. What I do now is I consult with CEO owners of mid-size and, kind of smaller companies on how to improve their profitability. One of the things I have learned is that there are a lot of owners and CEOs of companies, 1 million, 5 million, 10 million, 50 million, that people on the outside think are doing really well. But when you strip away from top line down to bottom line, and from bottom line to what kind of income they're generating, what kind of wealth they're building, not very good. In fact, in many cases, they're making less than when they were a really good employee at the thing that they used to do that made them think they could start this company. And so I help owners of staffing, recruiting, and consulting companies, and sometimes some other B2B service-oriented companies, improve their bottom line. And so it's a very direct path. It's almost like hacking profitability versus doing all the right systems and processes so years down the road you'll have profitability. This is, what can we do in the next 7 days, 30 days, 60 days, 180 days to dramatically change the equation in your favor?
Fantastic, Ben. So let's talk about the area of your expertise, which is scale the profitability of these companies, training and coaching the CEOs. I would like to arise two topics, right? Because we pretty much in the podcast we talk about generations and we talk about lessons from the top. That how can we approach to the full governance of a company, right? So let's start. Let me just throw you a couple of questions and let's talk about generations. It's a topic that really fired me because it is amazing how the mix of generations at work, it's arising a lot of problems with the teams, with the leadership.
Yeah.
So,
all right, Daniel, you promised you'd make it easy on me. Don't throw me any questions that make me seem like I'm an old dinosaur, right?
No way. I think it's a very related topic, with the profitability. Yeah, because if you don't have, I don't know, I see it in this way, but you tell me how you see it. If you don't have good teams, well-managed leadership that fit with all these new generations and what the new needs of these generations, well, it's going to happen what is happening, which is a great resignation. No? People don't want to work, even though you pay them a lot of money, even though you gave them a lot of amenities or whatever you want to give, they don't want to work. So what is your first 2 or 3 thoughts about it?
There's so much there. I'm going to, I guess, cover a few things. As the owner of your business, if you're not getting along or can't work effectively, and I'm not suggesting you shouldn't try to improve your management skills, but ultimately, kind of like an Old West movie, this company's only big enough for one of you. And since you're probably not going to fire yourself, you want to make sure that the people who are there are compatible with you. And so it's kind of a twist on what you said. So I'm not suggesting that as an older person in management, you wouldn't want to learn what works best for younger people that you're hiring. Totally get it. At the end of the day, however, if there's you as the owner, CEO, and there's 5 other people, if 2 or 3 or 1 of those people is not effectively working with you, once you've done your best to sort that out, if you can't get over that, since you're probably not going to fire yourself, they probably are the ones that have to go. And so I would not shy away from that. Just a recognition that as the senior manager or the CEO, the people who are working for you, their goal, particularly as the CEO and owner of the company, everybody who works at your company, their mission at the company is for you to be successful. Because the only reason you should be having that company is to further your personal goals, likely to be successful and have a purpose and things like that. And so theoretically, everybody who works there, that should be their goal. And if they can't get on that bus, or you can't help them get on that bus, maybe they're on the wrong bus. So that might be the tough answer to that question. But I would also say that, there's a whole lot of opportunity out there. And maybe maybe a nugget that I teach in my coaching that might come to this generation's idea is, let's just say you're 45 years old, you've been running this company for 15 years, you know everything there is to know about it. It's unlikely that your brand new 23-year-old assistant project manager has one tiny fraction of the insight and context that you have. And because you've been thinking about all these issues for so long, you might not train or convey or explain the richness of the context needed for that person to be able to kind of think for themselves and accomplish the work that they need to do based on the way you would do it. So maybe I'll just give you a for instance.
And fantastic, but then arise another questions. Do you reckon these owners, these founders, these entrepreneurs, 45, 55, which is Generation X, right? And their companies are full of millennials and now centennials, right? Centennials up to 18 to 27 and millennials 28 through 42, 40s, right? So because we are Generation X, we learn in the boot camp, no? We learn in the operation more. If you are an entrepreneur, you have to build the things, you have to sell, you have to check the banks, open the door, close the door, everything, right? So when these new generations comes with different needs and questions and say, this is what I do and I'm not gonna give the extra mile, and taking on your mind that if you don't have people, probably your company is not going to be running properly. So what would you say to these entrepreneurs, founders, that they think people has to work the way it has to work and that's it, and they are lacking of people because they don't want to work in their company? Well, do you know what I mean?
There were a lot of threads in that question. I'll just tease out one, which is, how do you get people to be excited and passionate about working in your company? One of the things I would say is, so many people want a sense of purpose. And I think that younger people have this idea, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, that they're not going to just sell shoes or make shoes, but they want to feel that what they're doing ladders up to some larger purpose, like we're helping people across the world get in touch with running and heal their feet and have great lives. So I guess what I'm saying is, I think younger people want a sense that what they're doing is cool and purposeful. And, just because they're making a shoe every day, how does that contribute to some larger, more purposeful, sometimes even a little bit vague mission? And I guess I would suggest that you want to give it to them. So there's probably two ways to do that right off. One is, how is the work that your company does directly making a positive contribution to the world or other people? And then the other one is, how is your company maybe separate from the direct work that it does, but maybe like through philanthropy or giving to the community or a local charity, making a benefit to the world? So if I were in the gym shoes business, which fortunately I'm not in, if I was talking about, hey, these shoes help people be more fit because they could go to the gym or run or exercise, and then this helps them have a higher quality of life, to live longer, have less diabetes and heart attacks and overweight, I would want to talk about that mission a lot more than I might think would be needed for older people. And then I would also, maybe I would have a local charity that my company was sponsoring or giving money to. Let's say it was helping disadvantaged children, get exercise so that it would help them help them stay in school and, be happy, and like an after school exercise program. If I was in the shoe business, that would make some sense. And so it's kind of the twin ideas of how does your day job create, like, ladder up to a larger purpose that helps the world? And then does your company do maybe nonprofit or charitable giving that also helps the world? And then I would be spending a lot of energy talking about that and helping people understand that. Because again, I don't know that your average 21-year-old can sometimes make those connections themselves. Maybe you want to help them connect those dots.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I'll put on the table this fact. Salesforce made this study, which they found that 80% of the problems of all the companies, or at least the companies that they made the study, are for the lack or distortion of communication. So in terms of communicate this mission, this purpose to this new generation, I think, I don't know what you think about it, but I think that older generations are getting short with this skill to communicate properly in a different language, in a different sign, in different tone, in different speed, even different speed to these new generations, and then pretty much they lose them. What do you think? Are we as this generation X, 45s, 50s, 60s, we are stuck in our old way of communicate our mission and purpose and vision?
Well, that's a big topic, and I can't say that I'm an expert at it. I have experienced myself that as an employer of people who were often much younger, sometimes even much older than me, there did sometimes seem to be a bit of a disconnect in terms of, everything from cultural references to what we would find important. And I guess what I'm suggesting is maybe taking additional time to deliberately explain the context in a fuller, richer way. I mean, I don't think young people are stupid. I think they're just thinking about something differently. And in many cases, as a 40, 50, 60-year-old person, you might just assume or take for granted so many ideas that these other younger people, they don't take those for granted, or they don't have that as a base set of experience. And I'll give you an example. I don't know. Let's say, back in the day, it was a common idea when people would call your company on the phone that, a well-managed company, you need to answer the phone by the third ring. Okay. So let's just pretend, I would imagine that in many cases, a much younger person might be thinking, why do we even have phones in the first place? What does it matter how many rings? And I'm busy working on email with customers, and this is important. We'll just pretend. I'm not sure that that's true. And let's say this 65-year-old CEO is thinking, son, when I was your age, they drilled into me, pick it up by the second ring, or you're, lazy, good for nothing, and giving the customer a bad experience. I don't know. We're just kind of making up a fictitious example. I think in that case, if that older manager were to say, hey, let me tell you why we're doing this. Some of our customers come from a generation where they're used to calling people on the phone. And for whatever it's worth, that segment of our customer base is responsible for this amount of profitability and this amount of revenue. And that's why we want to service those customers with excellence. Many of those older customers, when they call on the phone, they feel if you're not picking up by the third ring, your company is poorly managed. What else is wrong? I'm already suspicious of everything you tell me. So that's why we have a phone. That's why we have dedicated personnel to pick up that phone. And that's why I'm always asking you to make sure that you pick up, by the third ring. And so we should discuss if that works for you. If it doesn't work for you, we need to find somebody else who can do it. But at the end of the day, we're just making these numbers up. 20% of our sales and 30% of our profitability is coming from the high ticket sales we're generating from this older demographic, and they want to be able to pick up the phone. And when they pick up the phone and call us, they want a real human to answer the phone, and they want it to be answered by the third ring. And that's why we're doing this whole thing. And I'm using this whole example just to illustrate what I would call explaining the because. I think there's a shortage of managers around the world who often have more experience and more context around something to really explain fundamentally the why and the what is going on behind the scenes. It's one thing to just say, I told you to pick up the phone by the third ring. It's another one to say, maybe you don't know this, but from my generation, there was an expectation that people would pick it up quickly, that it would be a human. And those people who call with that expectation are responsible for 35% of our net profitability. And that's why we're doing this. Does that make sense to you, John?
Yeah, it makes sense. It's amazing. Yeah, it makes sense. I love it. Explaining the because. I love it. Of course. I think we have, as older generation, this challenge of explaining this because in this language, in this timing, in this way, in this motivation sense that they need, so they can really understand and just do what it's adding value to the company. So it's fantastic.
I mean, like I said, I think making sure there's a strong connection to a larger purpose.
Yeah.
The kind of thing that if somebody went to a party with their friends and they said they were working in your shoe factory, the other people that they're talking to would be like, oh, wow, that's cool. Instead of the first person saying, I work in the shoe factory, and everybody like laughing at them. You want them to be proud of the work that they're doing and where they work. So that's kind of this purpose thing. And then, explain the because, the context, the why behind the what, because they're just not going to have it generally because they don't have your experience. They don't have your background. And the reason you're in charge of a bunch of stuff is because you know stuff that the other people who work for you don't know. So you got to make sure that you're articulating that in a way that can kind of cross that, I'll say barrier. I'll just say cross that bridge with them.
Yeah. And in this sense, what I'm trying to put in the table is that the training is not only for all these operational staff or people, right?
For sure.
We, as the managers or the high managers, high directors, need these new skills, no? Does make sense to you? Skill-less and scale skills, like new kind of dynamics in business are it's happening that people is staying with no skills, or the skills that they have need to scale, right? So in this sense, we don't see from the management position this lack. We just see the people behind or down or under on their operation that they need to train to do properly the things. But I don't know if we up here in the managing position are seeing this lack of skills to cope with the new generations. Have you heard about the gifts? Do you remember that the companies used to give pens, cups for the coffee, terms, things like very common things, and it was like well seen. Now it's a big trend. I don't know if you have heard that the new generations don't want either pens, either cups. They want like certificates for music. They want parties. They want dinners. They want other kind of incentives. What it comes to your mind with all this?
There's a book called Giftology, which I'm a big fan of, and it talks about gifting, and it uses it mostly as a tool for business development, and but also quite a bit for, I guess I would say, generating goodwill. So certainly, if you're giving a gift to your employees, the intentionality is to generate goodwill. And so a gift that they don't value, not that much of a gift, right? Or not that beneficial of a gift. I think there are things that people value that are, have like a monetary value, right? So if I give you $10 worth of iTunes gift cards, it's sort of worth $10. But if we have a happy hour and you and your significant other come there, and I, as your manager, speak to your significant other and tell them what great work you're doing and how lucky we are to have you at the company, that cost me no dollars, so to speak, but is probably worth a lot to you. And so I guess what I would just say there is, different people, perhaps different generations, are going to value different things differently. I, as a manager, always wanted every dollar that I spent in a gift to be worth, more to the person who got it than a dollar. And so, I'll just give you an example. Back in the day when you could give your customers a bottle of wine at Christmas or something like that, I wanted to give them a fancy bottle of liquor because I assumed that it would take them longer to finish that bottle than one night or whatever. And so they might think about me multiple times. And, a $60 bottle of scotch, or now it's probably $80, versus two $40 bottles of wine, maybe the dollars I spent were the same, but the amount of either appreciation or recognition or value, I figured that in many cases, the customer would see that with higher value. And so I definitely think that it's important that if you're going to give a gift, just like if you're going to give a speech, you have to start with the customer first to figure out what it is that they're going to value. Now, just for example, like that pen, if that pen was $100 gold pen that you were giving, but it wasn't just a pen, it was supposed to be like, you have successfully mastered your first year here and delivered excellent results. Now that pen is not a pen to write with. That pen is like a badge of honor. And so I would just say, when you're thinking about gifts, I always tried to make it be of higher value. I have all sorts of stories if you want more, but if you want to go to the next topic, that's cool too.
Yeah, it's correct what you're saying. I mean, I agree with you. It's not about the pen that I'm giving you. It's what is worth it behind and what you have achieved.
Yes.
For us to give you this pen, right? Is more than just a pen. I agree with you. However, it's a problem that we are coping right now with the new generations, and that this is why we have to get down, understand more the new generations, and learn from them as well. One advice that you can give to the top management about the new generations, and one advice that you can give to the new generations about the top management?
Yeah, there we go. Put me on the spot. I would say that for younger people earlier on in their career, there's a concept that I would call managing up. And so one way to look at it is that your manager is responsible for making you successful, or that your manager has the job of making everything great for you. What I would just say is your manager is not your mom. They are not feeling necessarily that it's their job for you to be successful. What I would say is I think it's your job for you to make you successful. But your manager could be a very powerful ally for that. And so what I would say is when you go to your manager proactively and ask for feedback, or, how can I do better? Or what do I need to learn? Or when you go to, let's say you have a meeting with your manager and you come prepared with an agenda. Here's 5 things I want to update you on. Here's 5 things I need a decision on. and here's two things I need your authorization for. You are essentially managing your relationship with your manager, and it makes it easier for them to get excited about wanting to help you. And so if you can get your manager on your side to want to help you, and you're putting in the effort to show that in your mind, your success is your responsibility, I'll just tell you, I, as a manager, was much more excited about working with those people than people who felt like entitled for me to give them everything on a silver platter. So I just say, I'm not going to tell you whether it's fair or should or shouldn't. I'll just tell you what I think works. And I think that works to help people earlier on in their career be more successful. Tips for senior managers to work with younger people. Well, I already talked about connecting their work and the workplace and the company to purpose, whether it was the actual work that the company does or like their contribution to nonprofits and charities and things like that. That would certainly be one. A second one was when I said, explain the because. As a person who's been in the workforce 20, 30, 40 years, clearly your level of competence and confidence and context is so much greater than somebody who's just starting out. And I think the more that you can explain the why behind what's going on, I think the better off you would be doing. I think those are the two that I have right now. Other than just maybe as a third one, if you're planning on being in business for a long time, it's pretty likely you're going to have to crack the code on how to get younger people to work there. So it might be worth the investment on your side to, keep trying stuff. And one thing I would try is after you explain the because, maybe you want to get some advice and some coaching from that person you're trying to coach on what it is that they feel that they need to be successful in that role.
Cool. Fantastic. Crack the code. I love it.
Crack the code.
Crack the code. Explain the because. I love this one. It's not stupid. Just think different. I love that phrase as well. Beautiful. Well, you are leaving us a lot of insights. Ben, thank you very much for this podcast that is called All Generations. I appreciate your time, and pretty much I think you're going to have new followers. Where can they find you?
Yes. Please come and find me on LinkedIn. Okay. My name is Ben Hansen. The company is Profit Doctor. And I think if you type in linkedin.com and then there's like a slash and an IN and a slash, and then it's just Ben Hansen, BenHansen.
All right.
I do have a generations story for you. Well, you want to cover one?
Yeah, please.
When I first started my company back in 2007, we wanted to have a purpose-oriented organization. So we had a nonprofit that we were going to sponsor every year. And that nonprofit was Big Brothers and Big Sisters. So the idea there is that usually school-age children, typically from single-parent households, are matched up with a mentor, a little bit older, usually like in their 20s or 30s, to act as like a second powerful adult role model. Anyhow, so I was working with Big Brothers and Big Sisters, and at this time, there was a shortage of mentors. And I had another close friend from growing up who ran a program called Meals on Wheels, which here in the United States, it's a program to distribute food to older people, typically older people with less financial means. And it occurred to me, hey, let's get some big grandmas and big grandpas to be mentors to these young kids. And so I actually think there's a huge opportunity here in the United States and perhaps even in Mexico to pair much older people with much younger people. And I think there's a good benefit to both sides. So the younger people can have usually a lot more time and attention from a caring adult that maybe is less busy with work and raising their own family. And then the older people, I think it's exciting to, the youth and exuberance and energy of youth, and maybe help them figure out how to make Facebook work. So, all good.
Sounds great. That story sounds really good. Well, fantastic for this All Generations podcast. Thank you very much, Ben. You have gave us a lot of insights and a lot of information, and thank you for your energy and your time. And
Absolutely.
we hope to see you later in another podcast.
Okay. So great to be on your podcast, Daniel. And I hope some of the things that we talked about will help your listeners.
Thank you, Ben. So I'll see you. Nos vemos la próxima vez en All Generations. Yo soy Daniel de Ávila. Hasta pronto.